On a quiet night, James was tormented by a dream so vivid and terrifying. He saw a plane, the same one that would take his family on their summer vacation, falling from the sky in flames, breaking apart with all 333 passengers on board. Waking up in a cold sweat, James wondered how he, an ordinary boy, could have had such a premonition. The weight of saving those lives now rested on his shoulders. The next morning, as his family prepared for the trip, James felt like a stranger in his own home. His mind was trapped in the image of the plane disintegrating, and every detail of the dream haunted his thoughts. He knew he had to act, but how could he convince his family that his dream was a true premonition? James decided to confide in his mother first. He waited until the moment when his mother was most relaxed, preparing breakfast to bring up the subject. With his heart pounding, he approached her, hesitant about how to start a conversation about something so surreal yet vital. The kitchen, usually a place of joy and lively conversations, now felt suspended in a tense silence, the only sound being the coffee bubbling in the background. "Mom, I need to tell you about a dream I had last night," James began, his voice wavering with the tension of what he was about to reveal. He described the plane, a large Boeing they knew well with disturbingly clear details. The paint, the flight number, even the logo on the tail that gleamed in the sun before turning into a fireball in the sky. He continued, the words seeming to weigh heavier with each passing moment. And then, the engines started to fail. "It was a terrible noise, like nothing I've ever heard before," he said, his voice choked with fear. There were screams, people calling for their children, praying, some just silent, as if they already knew what was coming. James closed his eyes for a moment, trying to push away the image of the plane finally crashing to the ground, a deafening explosion followed by a deadly silence. When he opened his eyes, he found his mother looking at him, pale, her hand pressed against her chest, as if she could calm her own heart. "I felt like I was there, Mom. It was so real," he concluded, his voice barely more than a whisper now. His mother's reaction was immediate. The shiver that ran down her spine was both from fear and a deep maternal instinct to protect. She pulled him into a tight embrace, trying to comfort him while processing the gravity of what James had just described, knowing that something needed to be done, no matter how unbelievable it seemed. James's dad, always the skeptic of the family, initially dismissed the idea. However, seeing his son's shaken state, he agreed to at least check the flight conditions and the weather forecasts. This concession was a small relief, but James knew it wasn't enough to prevent the catastrophe he had seen. Desperate to do more, James made an anonymous call to the airline. He described his premonition in minute detail, insisting they review the plane's maintenance and safety procedures. The voice on the other end hesitated, but the urgency in James's voice was enough for them to promise an inspection. Meanwhile, news of James's intervention began to spread among his friends and neighbors. The community was divided between skepticism and a growing fear that James's prediction could be real. The tension in the small town escalated as the flight time approached. At the airport, technicians conducted a routine inspection of the plane. What they expected to be a simple check quickly turned into an alarming discovery. A critical crack in the engine, exactly as James had described. The maintenance crew was stunned and the flight was immediately canceled. The repercussions were immediate and vast. The 333 passengers were evacuated, and the story of how a boy's dream saved their lives began to make headlines. James, still anonymous, felt a mix of relief and disbelief. He had done it. He had changed the fate of hundreds. Despite feeling relieved, James struggled with the weight of his gift. He began documenting every dream, every vision, trying to find a pattern or some meaning that could explain his ability. His life had transformed from a quiet existence to that of a reluctant visionary. James spent hours at the local library, sometimes venturing into obscure sections of the internet, leafing through dense books on psychology, parapsychology, and historical accounts of unexplained phenomena. He absorbed every word, every theory about premonitions, trying to find something that could explain his visions. Many texts spoke of the connection between traumatic events and the emergence of psychic abilities. Others suggested a genetic predisposition, and still, there were those pointing to the mystical, suggesting that such gifts were a kind of spiritual calling. Every expert James spoke to had a new perspective or hypothesis. Some encouraged him to meditate and train his mind to better control and understand his visions, while others warned him about the dangers of delving too deeply into the unknown. He participated in online forums where people with similar experiences shared their stories and advice. It was a community of strangers united by their extraordinary experiences, each navigating the challenges of possessing a gift that few could comprehend. However, James often felt frustrated. Despite all the knowledge gained, no theory completely applied to what he experienced. The visions kept coming, some predictable and others completely random, and this lack of pattern confused him. He began keeping a detailed journal, noting each vision along with the emotional state he was in when they occurred, hoping to discover some trigger or connection that had escaped the experts. This process of self-exploration not only helped James accept his ability, but also made him realize that perhaps the true understanding of his gift would not come from external theories, but from deep and ongoing introspection. He began to see his premonitions not as a burden, but as an integral part of who he was, something that could not only shape his future, but also allow him to help others in ways he had never imagined. As James explored his abilities, new visions began to occur more frequently. He predicted a car accident in his town, a failure in a major dam system, and even a small fire at his school. Each correct prediction boosted his confidence, but it also isolated him further from his peers and friends. James's parents, initially hesitant, now fully supported his efforts to understand and perhaps control his abilities. They saw that their son had an extraordinary capacity that needed to be honored and understood, not feared or ignored. As James's story became known, he began receiving letters from all over the world. Some were from skeptics, others from people who believed they had similar abilities. Each letter was a window into a world that James was just beginning to understand. Over time, James learned to see his gift not as a curse but as a responsibility. He became an advocate for people with similar abilities, speaking at conferences and participating in panels to discuss the impact and importance of premonitions in modern society. James's life is a reminder that the extraordinary can arise in the most common circumstances, and that gifts, no matter how mysterious or unexpected, can have a deep purpose. Thank you for following James's journey. Don't forget to click on the video beside to continue exploring the mysteries of the unknown, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that challenge our understanding of the world. Until next time, where we will delve even deeper into the enigmatic and the inexplicable.